ร้อมแล้วนะคะสำหรับการเสวนาค่ะกับทั้งสองท่านซึ่งเราก็ได้รับเกียรตินะคะจากมิสเตอร์เจมส์ดีลอนะคะ Cedars-Sinai Accelerator Powered by Techstar แล้วก็มิสเตอร์ไมเคิลเมลอนค่ะ Founder President Stasis Labs นะคะ May I invite Mr. James Dilo and Mr. Michael Maylahn on the stage ค่ะและดิฉันต้องขอยกเวทีนี้ให้กับคุณวีนารัตน์เลาหะภคกุลอีกครั้งขอเสียงปรบมือให้กับทั้ง3ท่านด้วยค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะเดี๋ยวเซสชันนี้ขออนุญาตพูดเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะคะ so we have about 1 hour for this session and we'll be hearing from the accelerator and the startup and what are the challenges that they face in working together in making Stasis a success. But first of all, let us why are you laughing? So let us first of all get to know more about Cedars-Sinai Accelerator powered by Techstars. So we'll hear from James first. He has a background to share with us about what Cedars-Sinai Accelerator powered by Techstars does. And then after that, we'll listen to Michael about Stasis Labs. And then after that, I'll have a brief discussion. So let's start with James.
Sounds great. Thank you. Let's see here. So it's always a good sign when your slide deck shows up, so thank you for that. Good afternoon. My name is James Laur. I'm the Vice President for Technology and Business Affairs at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, California. I'd like to thank the conference organizers for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to participate and share some of our activities that I hope will be of interest to you. The theme of the conference, Power of Creativity and Innovation, and the topic for the next hour is entitled Sharing Experiences from a MedTech Accelerator in the United States. I will be covering this topic with my colleague Michael Maylahn, and we will start with a sort of overview of who Cedars-Sinai is, and then I will sort of try to focus on the commitment that Cedars-Sinai has had to creativity and innovation for its 100-year history, narrowing it down to its most recent sort of great idea, which is to create an accelerator program, which will then lay the foundation for Michael to give an overview of his company, the technology, and sort of what attracted him to the accelerator program. And then we'll, as we were saying at the beginning, we'll have a little conversation about what this all means and what we've learned and why we're so excited about this. Okay, so we have a lot of information to cover, and I'd like to just get started. So first, let me say a few words about my institution, Cedars-Sinai. Cedars-Sinai is the largest hospital in the Western United States. It's a nonprofit charity. It was founded in 1902, and we have 4 charitable missions. Basically, we exist to provide healthcare services. We pursue biomedical research. We educate the next generation of doctors and nurses, and we strive to improve the community. And in our view of the world, community is local and global. The next slide provides some basic facts and figures about Cedars-Sinai. I won't read all this to you, rather just simply note that it's a very busy place. The annual income of Cedars-Sinai is nearly $4 billion a year. So we have a lot going on. I had mentioned that one of Cedars-Sinai's priorities is biomedical research. As you can see from the statistics shown on this slide, Cedars-Sinai is very active in the research space. We spend over $170 million on research projects each year, and areas of particular strength and interest of ours are programs in cardiology, cancer, neurosurgery, digestive diseases, and regenerative medicine, which is the use of stem cells in clinical applications. So, from the various research programs, many new inventions are made. Creating new inventions, however, are just one part of the story. It's essential to find a way to bring these new discoveries to the market so that patients can actually benefit from the new treatments, new drugs, new diagnostics. This process of moving inventions from the laboratory into the real world is called technology transfer. So basically, tech transfer is the process of identifying, capturing new ideas, evaluating them for the market, and securing intellectual property protection, ultimately to commercialize the new products and services. So this slide here does a good job of providing an overview of the tech transfer program at Cedars-Sinai, and I'd like to highlight a few things. There's a lot of information on this slide. We have over 400 technologies in our intellectual property portfolio. 30% of the portfolio is licensed and creating income. Another thing to note is the diversity of the portfolio. Therapeutics, devices, diagnostics, tools, algorithms, and software. And I want you to keep in mind the diagnostic element, which is about a quarter of the technology. I have a comment to make on that later in the presentation. This past fiscal year, we received nearly 80 new invention disclosures from our faculty, and we bring in over $30 million in revenue from approximately 40 licenses to our technologies. So this is really focused on taking technologies out of our lab, but in addition to licensing them to companies that exist, Cedars-Sinai has also been creating new companies. And so this gives you a snapshot of over the past 5 years, we've created 15 new companies. And since they're new companies, they really don't have a lot of cash. So instead of taking royalties at the beginning, we take equity in the company. And this past month, we did a valuation of the portfolio, and we have about $85 million worth of equity value in these companies. So again, it shows the point of helping new technologies go into the real world can have immense value. There's one unique feature of our tech transfer program that I think is worth mentioning here. It's our international program. The underlying premise is that doing this stuff is very difficult, and doing it on your own can be very lonely and very challenging. So what we try to do is partner with people who have the same challenges, who are trying to fight the same fights as we do. And so international outreach for us has been a formal part of the program for the last 20 years or so. And since that time, we've built a network of nearly 50 leading hospitals and research institutes around the world. The purpose behind these collaborations are sort of multifold, but basically it's to learn about how technologies are marketed in other regions, to help other academic institutions market into the United States, find new investment opportunities, and really just learn about each other, because you can always sort of improve what you're doing back home by seeing what other people are doing that works for them. So remember I mentioned the Diagnostic Portfolio. So our tech transfer office had a huge amount of technologies in our portfolio that really wasn't going anywhere because a lot of the current industry partners aren't interested in esoteric biomarkers or new diagnostics that aren't ready for the market. But we felt that as a part of our charitable mission of bringing technologies into the real world, we really wanted to try to do something with all these assets instead of just see them die on our portfolio. So what we did was, sadly, our vision of taking these technologies into the real world ran into reality. It's really expensive. It's really difficult. You need a lot of expertise in areas that we didn't have. So what we did was look to a partner that we had in Singapore, A-STAR, which is a agency of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, which promotes research and development activities. And they happen to create a diagnostic hub, which is a sort of state-of-the-art facilities and expertise in developing diagnostic assets. And they were looking for people with diagnostic assets to develop. So we had a lot of what they needed, and they had a lot of what we needed. So basically, we're working together with A-STAR on creating new diagnostic tests that will be ready for the market as a part of a 10-year, 5-product partnership. So you must be wondering, when is he going to talk about the Accelerator? Well, this is the point where I'm going to do that. So that was a quick look at Cedars-Sinai and our sort of 100-year commitment to creativity and innovation. But that's sort of a traditional thing. That's a part of who we are. But this final episode of my story is going to be the new program that complements that commitment and enhances our efforts to harness technology to help us be more efficient, help lower costs, and improve the patient experience. And the program is the Cedars-Sinai Accelerator. So the Accelerator was established 3 years ago, so it's very young. And while our traditional tech transfer program looks inwardly at new inventions coming out of our own research labs, the Accelerator specifically seeks to engage with entrepreneurs and startup companies that are outside of Cedars-Sinai. Because as you know, there's no shortage of no shortage of problems in healthcare, and working together with smart people from outside our organization can bring fresh ideas and new energy. So quickly, I want to mention how we use the word accelerator. For us, the word accelerator is in its literal meaning. It's to make something faster. In an incubator is where an idea is taken from a sketch on a piece of paper to an actual product or service, and that's really at that point when it's ready to be brought to the market when you might look at a accelerator program to bring it into reality. So the Startup Accelerator at Cedars-Sinai is, I can't say, a model of every accelerator you'll run into. There's no two accelerator programs I've run into that are alike. Ours is an intensive 3-month boot camp program. It's very focused on mentorship to provide feedback on the market fit, business models, a lot of the things that we just heard William talk about as a part of understanding who your user is, understanding what their problem is, as opposed to providing them with a solution that you came up with without considering their needs or their hopes and dreams. In addition to time dedicated to preparing the company's founders for determining their product, we also spend a lot of time on how to determine the amount of money you need and how to actually raise that money. So since the program was established, we've had 3 classes and a total of 28 companies graduating from the program. In fact, 3 weeks ago, our 4th class just started. The financial structure of each participant company in the program has basic features. It's basically, to participate, each company provides a small percentage of its common stock, approximately 6%. Cedars-Sinai provides each company with $25,000 to help offset the costs incurred in the 3-month residency in Los Angeles. Cedars-Sinai also provides each company with about $100,000 in the form of a convertible note, so that when the company has its first raise of capital, that converts into equity in the company as well. And while the vast majority of our first class came from the Los Angeles area, we were really quite surprised and pleased to see that the current classes are coming from all over the United States and beyond. We receive over 400 applications for the program, and we choose 10 to join the class. Applications have been coming from a broader range around the world. Now, people are always asking me if the program is successful. And I have to say, since it's only 3 years old, I don't know. It's a bit too soon to say it's a success or not. We can, however, look at how the companies who come through the program are doing. So this slide will show how the companies have been doing in raising money, which is a traditional way of gauging success. The light green color represents money that had been raised before the program, and then the darker green provides an indication of how much money the company has raised post-program. So to date, 13 companies have raised a total of $43 million post-program. In total, the 25 active companies have raised a total of $82 million in the pre- and post-program. Another way of looking at success is to track the growth of employees. So many of the companies grew rapidly as a result of the traction they gained from the Accelerator program, and overall, the active companies have hired 188 new employees after they started the program. And of course, everybody likes to see themselves in the media, And our program has generated a lot of interesting attention in the media, and we're very pleased with that as a way to highlight the efforts that we're doing in this new undertaking. Another aspect that we believe is important is the growing reputation of the program has led to valuable conversations and connections throughout the world with thought leaders who are struggling and inspiring everyone in the same way as we hope our program can inspire others. So, with that, let me thank you for your kind attention. That was a large amount of material to cover, but my hope is that you now have the context to Michael's talk and then our ultimate conversation about the actual program, the nuts and bolts, and what we think is really the most important message is what can we learn here that we think has value and potential applicability in Thailand. So, Michael, stage is yours.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate the host for having us. My name is Michael Maylahn, founder and president of Stasis Labs. We're a smart patient monitoring company. I fundamentally believe that the way that we're delivering care in hospitals and around the world is broken. It's a reactive care model that is not efficient for the aging population around the world. Now, a proactive care model is what I'm a proponent of. So let me kind of paint an example for you of the differences. A reactive care model is a patient is having a cardiac arrest. The nurses and the doctors run to the bedside to shock them to try to bring them back to life. A proactive care model is where you anticipate that the patient is going to crash and intervene before you even need to save them. So we started our company based on this belief, built a hardware, software, cloud infrastructure, and artificial intelligence to be able to predict patient events in advance and allow doctors and nurses to be able to go and actually help. We started this off in India. We saw a large opportunity in the country, and my co-founder was from there, and we had some relationships to get up and going. Now, as we started building the company more and more, we realized that this need for moving healthcare into a more proactive model was really a global need. And so since then, we've been able to really try to understand how the needs of customers, whether it be in India, the US, or in other countries, can be met to be doing this. As part of that process, we went through the Accelerator in the first class back in 2016. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, you can do a Create an Innovation Accelerator in a place like Cedars-Sinai because there's a lot of money. They're a hospital for Hollywood celebrities. They have tons of it, and so they can throw it at innovation. And I'm here to try to say that I don't believe that. I actually think that a place like Thailand, and Bangkok in particular, is a perfect place to be able to create the kind of innovation for global scale. And the reason that I think that is this concept of reverse innovation. Reverse innovation is where you have limited infrastructure, limited kind of ability to be able to pay for a product, and you have to design it with that minimal kind of availability, and then you can start working with those with more and more resources to build a product that works for, say, a medical center. And so to give my product as an example, we started working with clinics in rural India and trying to really understand with limited electricity, with no Wi-Fi, with a lot of humidity and dust, low trained staff, how do we build a system that can deliver this proactive care that I'm speaking of? Now, as we went through this process and really understanding that, then we went and we were working with medical centers, working with some of the leading physicians in using all of the newest technology and trying to understand, what do you like about your current technology? What are the pain points? And really understanding the gaps from those that are using the absolute most bleeding edge technology. And the beauty with this model of reverse innovation is that since we started in a place where they had very little resources, where we had to be very creative in how we designed a very new age product and a business model that fit, very limited capital availability. They had almost no working capital, and they didn't have the credit required to be able to get loans from banks. How do you build an innovative business model that still fits this? And so as a result of that, what we were able to do is build something that worked both for rural clinics all the way up to top medical centers, i.e. rural India, urban US, and the entire gradient of everything in between. Now, bringing it back to Bangkok, why do I say I believe that you guys are in a perfect place to be able to use this same philosophy, whether this be for healthcare, agriculture, education, etc., is the fact that you have areas of most of Thailand that do have pretty limited access to resources. So for example, clinics in rural Thailand. Now you also have some of the top medical tourism hospitals here in the world. And so when you take the same approach that we did of understanding how to build a product and business model of the limitations of the rural areas and the robustness of the urban environment, you've suddenly been able to build something that then can scale globally. And so that's why I believe that you guys have a great opportunity right here in your own backyards to be able to build something for global scale. Now, when I think about that, there's a few things that need to change. And I think this is actually tapping a little bit into William's presentation for us, but a lot of it comes down to mindset. And so when you think about mindset, there's a few things that immediately come to mind that I believe if you change very slightly, you'll suddenly realize that you have everything, all the resources available. It's just really how you put them together. And so one of them is this concept of fearing failure, right? You can't feel failure. In fact, you actually often will learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. And so it's slowly over a period of time celebrating and recognizing your failures, doing kind of a retrospective. So looking back over what are the different things you did and what did and didn't work, and learn from those, reinforce those. And that's, I think, a very key part of being able to do that. Another one is believing in yourselves. This is actually, I think, one of the most important ones, is if you think you can only build something for your local community, then that's what you're going to do. If you think you're going to be able to build something for your country, then that's what you're going to do. But if you think that you're putting the pieces together from the start to build something globally, then that is what you're going to do. You're really your own biggest limitation. And so I encourage all of you, when you're thinking about how do I solve the problems that I'm seeing, don't limit yourself, because you really can do anything. At the same time, you don't want to think, oh, I see this massive problem. Say, people don't have access to food. Well, that's a really, really, really large problem. And when you start unpacking that, there's so many problems that make up that big problem. And so if you try to figure out how to solve that, you may get so overwhelmed that you don't even know where to start. And so as a part of that process, you want to think, well, what is a very small problem that will make a tiny little dent in solving that? And the beauty of being able to create a kind of community of innovation like what is being seen here today is that you get tons and tons of smart people thinking in different ways with different perspective of how to solve different small parts of the problem. And when you get all of those innovators together working on solutions to their own problems that they've identified, now suddenly the solution gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And ultimately over time, as you're working on that and you solve maybe one small problem, then you see another problem nearby that, or many of those, and you can kind of start working until ultimately, together as a community and as a world, we've been able to solve some of the largest problems that are presenting us as a species. And so I guess really I'll end in saying, before we go into our discussion here, don't fear failure. Really believe in yourselves, and don't think that limitations of resources is a limitation. It actually can be a strength if you really kind of open your mind to that. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'm curious, James, for the 3-month program, what do you actually do with all the companies or the startups that actually join the program?
Yeah, that's the question all the applicants ask as well. So what am I going to do there for 3 months? The most important component, I would say, is the access to world-class physicians, nurses on the floor, how the billing office bills patients, anything that a company needs to understand in order to be successful in a healthcare space. You don't have to make wild guesses about how you're going to get reimbursed. You don't have to make guesses about what happens in the operating room. You don't have to guess what happens on the hospital floor. You get to engage with the individuals who do this, and they can tell you, I won't buy that, this won't work for me, this is the wrong color, this needs to go here. That's powerful.
So you will have applicants applying, and then you'll pick. So
Yes.
what is the criteria?
In fact, you definitely don't want me picking any of the companies. One of the things we learned was having the people with the problem, a la William, is important because when we're looking at applications, the exciting technology is there, but we want the chief nursing officer to stand up on her chair and say, that's a company I want to work with. They're doing something I would love. Because if you show up with the, I think this is neat, nurses should love it, no nurse in their right mind is going to really embrace it because I'm not a nurse, I don't understand what they're doing. So we bring in the actual potential users, the people who are going to write contracts and buy that service or product, come in and pick those 10 companies.
Can Thai startups apply?
Yes, in fact, we've had a lot of applicants growing from the Southeast Asian community, and we're waiting for the right connection between our clinicians to spark a reason for them to come and join the program.
Right. So for Stasis, how do you actually, what did you actually learn from the program, the 3-month program?
I don't think we have enough time to address all of that. No, thinking about some of the most important parts. So as I was mentioning, it started off working with hospitals over in India, right? And so we'd spent, before we ever wrote our first line of code or designed our first circuit, we spent about 2.5 years interviewing thousands of hospital administrators, doctors, nurses, patients, and their family members in India about the issues around patient monitoring. Which was kind of an idea that we had, which is there's all these patients in the hospital where nurses are manually walking around, gathering different vital signs, and then all of a sudden patients are slipping right in the hospital and dying, and no one knows. And so this is a problem that we really understood well in India, and we'd found a solution for. And we kept hearing from people in places like Cedars and UCLA and other academics in our backyard, well, hey, this is a problem that we have as well. But we didn't really understand that. And so that's a long way of answering your question, but essentially we spent the 3 months interviewing every single person that we could get a meeting with at Cedars, as well as other industry leaders that came into the program. And the reason being is that we asked a lot of open-ended questions to really understand their perspective of the problem. And I stress perspective because I think that's really important, is that when you talk to someone, whether it's an administrator who's on the high level kind of looking at the 5-year strategy, or if it's someone on the ground who is just there, day to day doing the paycheck, they're going to have different perspectives of the same problem. And if you interview thousands of people and talk about this iterating over and over, you can understand the complete picture of the problem. And then you can actually understand how to really solve that. And so we spent the 3 months really trying to understand the perspective of the problem from a US audience.
But why do you want to focus in medtech in the first place and not in some other areas?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to that. I mean, and let's see. So pretty much my entire life, every member of my family had been involved in healthcare in some way. So my mom was a nurse, spent a lot of time with families in the home when their loved one was passing away. And my father worked a lot with the US government around helping with kind of public health and big kind of health issues. And pretty much every other family member had been involved in some other facet of healthcare. And so when I was in grade school, very young, I became really obsessed with how technology was evolving and how at the intersection of technology and medicine, we could kind of find new solutions. And so as I got into my high school days, I kind of I guess I had a bit of this aha moment where I realized technology was accelerating at a pace so rapidly that in the next 10 years, with the connectivity of the world, with the mass consumerization of mobile technology, and with kind of algorithms being developed that were kind of going into what people are kind of now calling artificial intelligence and other predictive analytics, we suddenly had this perfect storm of things that could really solve problems in healthcare in an efficient way that before I don't think technology was quite ready. And so I wanted to work on that.
Do you think it's a prerequisite as well for anyone who wants to do startup to be really involved or have some kind of connection with that startup? Or can we just jump into any fields that we see there are pain points in and then just start a business?
My answer is I think it depends a little bit, honestly. I mean, I think the single most important thing if you're going to start a company is that you have to be really, really, really passionate about it. You have to really care. And as part of the process of understanding the problem that you're solving, need to understand the problem so well that you almost have this kind of like unique insight or like really kind of clear understanding of how to solve that. So I think that if you are really passionate about something, I think some of the coolest companies that I know were born out of a personal experience, and that's why they became so incredibly emotionally attached to it. And so you may not have the expertise, but if you're really passionate about it, you're going to seek out to learn. And so I don't think you have to have a background, but you definitely have to have something that draws you to it on an emotional level.
And can I supplement what Michael was saying? One of the companies that came into the accelerator actually was very successful in a sort of a area working with the National Security Agency and the Central Intelligence Agency in the US, and they woke up every morning going, I don't feel good about what I'm using my life for, and they felt that if they could take what they're doing, which was a very sort of powerful engine of analytics for analyzing data, if we can do this somewhere else and do things that help people, we would feel better about ourselves. So they came to the accelerator and they said, healthcare has a lot of problems. We have this great solution. Can we figure out by talking to clinicians what we might be able to do with this thing? And so they completely got out of the business of working with the United States government, and through the program identified a really big problem, which is helping find patients who can qualify for clinical trials out of the electronic health record that isn't really set up to do that kind of searching. So their engine was able to go in and identify people who could benefit from clinical trials that they didn't even know about, that their doctors didn't even know about. So they're feeling, to answer your question of can you just sort of wake up and decide, I want to get into healthcare, I have no reason why. There's no shortage of problems in healthcare. There's just so much, and technology has so much potential to make a difference. These kind of programs, I think, can help connect you with people who can tell you how your great idea might be an amazing solution that nobody's thought of.
In the graph that you showed us just now, with all the startups that actually learn with your program, how are they all doing today?
Yeah, it's funny. The section of the presentation I took out was the answer to that question because I was like, oh, there's a lot of information here. But basically, we look at our companies in three ways. There's a sort of a success curve for startups, and there's failed or didn't make the connection to the market. There's ones who are still finding their place, their product fit in the market, and then those who are gaining traction. So when we look at the curve in that way, 3 of the companies from the program of the 28 have gone out of business who basically learned that their idea for healthcare wasn't going to work. It wasn't a good business model. So they were able to, and one of the things we talk about is helping people fail faster. So we help them not spend all their money on a product or service that in the healthcare space they'd never be able to make a business out of. So they were able to pivot, do something else, and got out of healthcare, which is in a way a failure from the program because it's not in the healthcare space, but they were able to learn about the space in a way that they could make it more intelligent decisions. In the center space, I want to say a good half to 2/3 of the companies are still active, still in the mix, trying to find where their product might work. And so the 3-month program is 3 months, and at the end of the day, that's not a lot. But once you're in the program, it's not that you hit day 90 and then we never want to talk to you again. There's still ongoing access in those networks that you've developed. And then the last, I'd say about 1/3 or so of the companies have actually become really powerful and really successful. And in a world where startups, basically 1 out of 10 is alive after 2 years, our program is showing that we can take a good third and be alive after 2 years. We think is a very good indicator that what we're helping companies learn is powerful and valuable.
So for the companies that actually failed, why? Why did they fail?
Yes, for instance, one of the companies was a really successful B2C business where they were going to customers in post-discharge and providing for assistance around the house, for like helping buy groceries, help get dressed in the morning, not really nursing care, but just sort of after you get out of the hospital, sometimes you need that little extra help. So they found out that, growing our business door to door is a little bit slow, and we will go to the source of patients, which is a hospital. So they came to the program because they said, then we can be a B2B, we'll help the hospital create a business line that provides their patients who are discharged with this missing piece of the healthcare system. What they found was a lot of business, but they couldn't hire enough people, they couldn't make enough money, there was not enough margin there, so the business model was going to collapse. If they had success, they'd go out of business because they couldn't, they'd pay more for their personnel than they would actually get back in reimbursement because the healthcare system doesn't pay for that. So for them, what they did was they stopped doing that business and they became, I think, herbal medicine, like herbal teas and spices. So now they're very successful just in a whole different business. And we got a letter from their board of directors saying, thank you so much for helping us find out that the future wasn't a good mix for what we were doing.
So for those that actually became successful, what made them successful?
I think, and I'd be interested to hear what Michael has to say, for us, I think it's where you have that really amazing connectivity between the vision of what the entrepreneur has and the relevance and the sort of need and excitement of the clinician. So when the clinicians really hear the message and see the potential, and then they work together to make it actually successful in the complicated healthcare space.
So is that what happened? You made clinicians excited with your idea?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'd say that when I look at ourselves, but also the other companies that I think have been the most successful, I think it's really distilled down to there's a very clear problem, and it's a large one. And their solution really fits well with that problem, and they have the team, and they've been able to attract the team to really execute on that. So there's nothing too crazy that I'm disclosing here, but really they were able to find, product market fit and in a team market, team product fit as well. So it's kind of like those three pieces all came together really well.
And another thing that I think really is the nature of human beings. So when clinicians get excited about a new product, a new entrepreneur, a company that's really inspiring them to improve what they're doing, they're going to pick up the phone and brag about it and put connections out to their network at other institutions. And so that gives these companies such a leg up. When you go into any business to try to sell something, you have to figure out who to talk to. And there's this like big, gigantic, mysterious company, and having another doctor or nurse or administrator pick up the phone and connect you with somebody with that calling card of Cedars-Sinai thinks these guys are the real deal, really worth your time to talk to them. It's really made a big difference for just sort of getting that momentum.
I mean, extracting that a step farther, that would be applicable to anyone here looking at starting a company, regardless of industry or what you're doing. It's this whole concept of word of mouth, right? And so if you look at your first few users or customers, there's a difference there, but the first few people that have bought and are using your product and they really love it and it's working and it's filling a need for them, then that is the seed of success. And so if you go and you try to get a bunch of people using your product and it doesn't work, and you're like, oh, well, this is a sales process issue or some other issue or business model issue. No, it's not filling the need of the person you're selling it to. There's some kind of mismatch. And so rather than trying to start scaling that up or throwing a bunch of money at that, take a step back and really understand what can I do to get the first few people to absolutely be obsessed, to really, really love it, and that's then the seed of success. And so I guess actually going back to your question before, I think what everyone that has been really successful in the program, but then just more broadly speaking, all my friends who have started companies, those that have succeeded have been able to find that absolute customer obsession. And then you take on that, and then it's all about executing that customer obsession to scale. But I mean, word of mouth is a very sticky kind of marketing technique. You can pay for all the other ways of scaling, but if you have people that absolutely love you, they're going to be able to get your business to help you grow a heck of a lot faster than trying any other technique.
So for Stasis Labs, let's say I'm a patient. What does it do for me from my perspective? Now
Yeah.
that you get all your clinicians excited, okay, that it actually will be able to fulfill some pain points. Yeah. So for the patient, what does it do?
So when you're in a hospital, you're scared, right? You're vulnerable. You're not feeling well, and you've entrusted quite literally your life in the clinical team, the nurse, the doctor, and others to help you. And when you look at the hospitals today, a good portion of the hospital, the team is occasionally walking around and checking on you every 2, 4, 6 hours, unless you're in the intensive care unit. Then there's someone always there. And our whole idea is, can we take modern technology and some new innovative processes to take the quality of care you're receiving in the ICU and bring it to the entire rest of the hospital? And so why you as a patient would care about that is that through the use of our technology, we have a machine that is at least always watching you, and if there's ever an issue, then your entire clinical team knows about it immediately and can come and help. So rather than someone occasionally checking on you, there's a kind of proactive system that's going to alert them if there's ever an issue. And we also have a display right there at the bedside that just uses simple icons and colors. So kind of how I like to think about it is you could be a 5-year-old sitting there next to your grandfather and you see everything is green and you understand, okay, it's okay. There's no numbers or waveforms, other things that require a medical education to understand what's going on. We've really simplified it for the patient and their families so that they can immediately understand, hey, doctor says everything is okay. I don't need to worry about it. I'm already worrying about enough things, you know, myself as a patient or my loved ones in the hospital. So it's really about kind of giving peace of mind.
So now, apart from India and the US, where else did you actually move from Stacy's labs into?
Well, we're still pretty young, so we're only in the US and India right now. Although they're both a lot of, you know, they're pretty big markets, right? So there's been a lot. I mean, just focusing on more than one country already as a small company has been a pretty broad focus. Our kind of how we've thought about it is that India is kind of representative of one type of market where there's a lot more limited resources, both in terms of infrastructure and capital. And then the US is kind of at the other end of the spectrum where there's a lot of resources and a lot of capital, although incredibly inefficient because of that, right? And so we've kind of seen those two different beds as the different types of markets that are representative of what we're trying to sell to. And so by creating a company that is understanding of both sides of the spectrum, then we can use those as launch points to be able to really go globally, and doing so through working with partners to help us.
Talking about healthcare, I think we all agree that there are so many areas that we can improve on. What would be the next big field or some of the big ideas in this healthcare?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, there's no shortage of big ideas. I think those are the fruit of like movies and the television shows that are talking about the future of medicine, and you know they're going to have this thing that you go like this, and oh, you have this, and here, take this pill, and you're going to be fine. But I think the nature of healthcare in reality is not about so much big ideas. Those are going to happen when they happen. In a way, we look to universities and our technology transfer programs to be looking for those big ideas. What an accelerator program and what I think is relevant every day of every week is little problems, little improvements, things that we do because that's the way we do them. And someone from the outside can say, well, you know, you can be more efficient, it can cost less, and the patient outcome will be better if you did these simple things with technology. Harnessing technology, say, from an Uber company to say, well, can't you use that kind of model to help get people who are not in emergent care in needing an ambulance to take them to the hospital, have it with a system where you get people to the hospital in a safe, efficient manner so that you don't have sick people having a heart attack like behind the wheel of a car driving themselves to the hospital. So those are the kind of things we want people to do, is look around themselves, look at technology and wonder, how can this make healthcare better? Big ideas I don't think are going to go away, but they're certainly not going to solve all the real problems of being in healthcare. Michael?
I completely agree. I mean, I would extract that out a bit, and I'm obviously biased here because of what I said earlier, but kind of what I was talking about, this whole idea of moving from a reactive to a proactive care model. And in many ways, that kind of is an umbrella that encompasses a lot of different problems. And I personally think that it's a huge idea, and I'm not trying to say that I'm the only one that can solve this. It requires our entire world to really solve this. But if we want to continue to provide more and more efficient and quality of care, especially as our population is getting older and older, we need to figure out ways of being able to more proactively or preventatively attack issues rather than trying to fix them when it's become a really big issue. So for example, it's the kind of has a bit of a negative connotation, at least in the US, but it's like, do you give someone a bandage or do you give someone like a vitamin, right? So do you help fix the problem before it's a problem, or do you fix the problem once it's been a really big problem? And you can unpack that to a lot, but I really think that's a really big idea because I don't know how it is here, but in the US, there's 10,000 people every single day that turn 65. And I know that in Thailand and in every country around the world, there's more and more elderly people. I kind of like to think, I've heard this term coined before, the silver tsunami. There's a lot of people getting old that are going to need care. So as that is happening, how are we going to respond? Are we going to keep throwing more money at it, or are we going to figure out how to be more efficient? And so I think that efficiency while maintaining higher and higher quality is really the big idea.
In terms of business as a startup, what's the biggest challenge that you faced so far? A couple, fine.
No, I think there's always a lot you could say, but it's really around attracting the best team, hiring people. Because if you find the right team, I think anything's possible. So finding the right people to come together to be able to solve the problem that you're working on, and as you keep growing, getting the best people, especially in a competitive marketplace where you're trying to hire the best talent, that's really challenging. I think if you really understand the problem and you have a solution that works for that, and you've been able to attract in some initial core people, all your other problems around being able to scale, around getting money, around all these other things that people often talk about with startups, I think all of those are solvable when you have a really good core team, and then you can grow on that.
And it's a sort of a corollary to what you said, Michael. When we're in the Accelerator program looking at these 400 applications, we have 5 things that we look for. Team, 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 product. Because you can have an amazing product that lousy teams can screw up, but you can have amazing people do amazing things with a product that just isn't possible otherwise. So to your point about hiring the people, it's really a challenge.
How do you know if you have hired the right people? You got to test it out somehow, yeah?
If you figure that one out, let me know. Everyone in the world wants to know that one. You make a lot of
let's make a business around that.
You make a lot of mistakes in the process, right? No, I mean, I honestly don't have a great answer. I mean, the best way that we've thought about really hiring the best people is we take our time. We kind of really think through the process. We trust our intuition or trust our gut in kind of the process, and we pay close attention to whether it's working or not and why it's working or not. And if it's not, then that person's probably not going to get better, and there's no point kicking the can down the road. So got to let them go and kind of keep going. So it's being diligent.
And money or financing is not a problem for you at all?
I didn't say that. It's not the biggest problem. No, it's realistically not been that hard for us. We're very fortunate in that sense. I think it's once again, we really understood the problem, and we built a solution based on that, and we continue to revisit it. And it's built on this belief of being able to accelerate medicine towards proactive care, and I think people are really attracted by that idea. And so we've been able to pitch that in a way that has been able to attract a lot of capital.
So there's, along the way, there's not even a point where you said, we might not be able to do this.
It depends on the day, or when in the day. I mean, still today, I wake up and I think, this is about to be super successful, and then 2 minutes later, I'm like, wow, there's no way this is going to succeed. So that hasn't gone away at all.
So you got to persevere somehow.
Absolutely, and that's where passion comes in.
What would be your advice for all startups?
I think one of the biggest ones, and I touched about it a little bit at the beginning, but really believe in yourself. the perspective or what you think you can do will be the reality. You're kind of your own limit. And so if you really feel strongly about something, pursue it. And if you fail, then that's okay because you've learned a lot in the process and you've built more and more relationships and you're going to be able to succeed in the next one. So keep persevering on what you're really passionate about and don't limit yourself. Conquer the world.
James?
Yeah,
Final advice?
I'd say sort of like this, but it's really don't keep your dreams a secret. You want to throw your dreams out there, get as many people as possible, critiquing it, shooting them down, and with that, you will make your dream come true. Keeping your dream to yourself, nobody's going to know about it, nobody's going to buy it, nobody's going to give you any money to make it. So, dream big and do it. Just sort of like if I can steal your shirt for a second, it's just sort of you have to do what you are dreaming of or it's not going to get done.
All right.
Yeah, let's build the world that we want to see together.
All right. Thank you very much, James and Michael. Thank you.